Join us next time and learn how to navigate an ocean crossing. Meet subarctic sailing adventurers, the Sykes.
It was only 2 years ago that Leslie and Carolann Sike returned from the historic subarctic journey across Hudson Bay, which brought them wide recognition and applause from the North American sailing community.
Hey! Welcome home!
Now they're off again to challenge the stormy, iceberg-studded North Atlantic. Their destination is Lenningrad, Russia.
Leaving Toronto in April of 1989, their planned route is up the St. Lawrence River to St. John's, Newfoundland, then across the Davis Strait to Gotham, Greenland, and then on to Iceland, where they'll winter, and then on the next year through the Baltic Sea, and finally to Leningrad. We talked to them just before their departure. Leslie spoke of the major challenges before them.
We expect to have our most difficult part is when we penetrate the ice floe, which is the southern tip of Greenland. Now, going up the Labrador coast, by the way, you can expect anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 icebergs that are passing by each year. Further up, when we cross the beginning of the Hudson Strait, as we enter Davis Inlet, where there are as many as 40,000 of these icebergs can be found at any given time. So, add to this some of the weather conditions. In this sailing books I've just read that wind strength has been measured in that area at over 300 kilometers an hour. So I think this would be a good way to get rid of my dandruff, cheaply. But we hope we never get into anything like that. But nevertheless, we are prepared. Although we'd like to travel on a straight line in a northerly direction, but we can't because of the ice. So there are certain times where you have to go against the tide and the current and all that.
The Ice Atlas is Leslie's most indispensable guide. It details the likely extent of the ice floe and what to expect.
There are 35 different kinds of ice up in the Arctic. And of course I won't go into all of them, but just to give you a few examples. There's the icebergs, of course, and then there's the bergy bits, which to certain people will probably look like iceberg, but if the berg is less than 50 or 60 feet out of the water, it's considered a bergy bit. And less than that, it becomes pack ice. And there is the growlers. But to yachters, or yachting, the small boats like us, sailing boats and power boats as well, the most dangerous would be the pack ice because it can simply crush the boat. If you take a wrong lead, you get into trouble, the ice closes, it can crush the boat.
Leslie's unique chart storage system makes for good reading in the head.
Now here we have 329 charts that are required for this trip. I take the charts and reinforce one edge of the chart with the tape. Then I punch several holes on them, these holes that correspond with these pegs. And this is the best way of storing all these charts on a small boat. Because whether you fold them or roll them, it would just take up a tremendous amount of room. But this way, the charts are all in order as we progress on this expedition. And I take the charts from here, take it to the chart table. When I'm finished with them, I bring them back and I hang it on the upper part of the same setup as we have on the bottom. So when I have to come back on this trip, the charts will be exactly in order, but in reverse for me to come back on this trip. And this is what I found to be about the most economical way of storing the charts on a small boat. This is the nav station of Aqua Star. This is where all the instruments are located that are necessary for accurate navigation. For example, to tell our position, we have a satellite navigation as well as a LORAN C. The difference between the two is the satellite navigation will give you a very accurate position, but only maybe twice or 3 times an hour, where the LORAN C gives you continuous readout. Here where all the radios for communications are located. We have 2 radios in case if something happens to one, we have a backup set. This is where the radar is located. Radar is our eyes in the dark and in the fog. Should we be traveling in dense fog, we turn the radar on, and the radar will help us to spot navigational hazards like icebergs, other ships, and land and rocks and whatever. Then other instruments that tells us the depth of the water, other instruments that tells us the distance that we traveled and the speed that we're traveling at. We're not using sextant at all because the omnicolor of the Arctic is gray and fog. And of course, if you happen to be so lucky that you can see the sun, well, then you don't see the horizon, or you don't know where the horizon is because it's covered with ice. So it'd be very difficult.
Radio communications in the Arctic are minimal, so Leslie does his own weather forecasting.
Aqua Star is equipped with 2 barometers, so we can have it in millibars and centimeters as well as inches and kilopascals. So I take my pick, whichever looks better at the time. But also what I have learned about sailing and navigating in the Arctic, that at that time of the year that we're going to be there, usually the low pressure systems travel in a northeasterly direction at a tremendous speed, like they travel about 60 and 70 miles an hour. And so they go through very quick. And the barometer will not give you a warning as much as you would like to, or as much as you would get, say for example, in the southern hemisphere. Chances also are good, and also it happened to us before where the wind was already blowing at a gale force wind before the barometer started showing that there is a low pressure system. So we have to be alert. Aqua Star is very well rigged. Everything is an overkill, as they say. We have extra heavy rigging, extra heavy sails, and should we get caught, you know, we should be able to survive until we shorten sails.
The life on Aqua Star is a little more grueling. Each member of the small crew takes an hour-long turn at the helm 4 or 5 times a day, while Leslie, as navigator, is up all the time.
Because of the ice, you're constantly changing not only your position, but you're changing your direction as well. So this is practically a 24-hour job. The reason for that is once you're up around the Hudson Strait area, you're approximately 1,000 miles away from the magnetic North Pole. So your compass is almost useless. So you have to rely on just absolutely every information that is available to the navigator. Let it be your speed, your distance. If you're in an area where there is sounding, then you got to follow your depth sounder to see where the continental shelf, to give you an idea that yes, your position is fine. We are very pleased with the satellite navigation up there because the further north you go, the quicker the passes. I can receive, or I have been receiving as many as 3 satellite passes in 1 hour. Okay, the longest has ever been like 3.5 hours before passes. So the navigator's job is really difficult up there because everything is uncertain.
We came in to Churchill. I mean, all of us, we couldn't believe we had actually made it from those, I think it was 108 days. I mean, it wasn't easy. It was difficult, you know, the 4 personalities. It was difficult seas that we had been in just a few days earlier. So it was really just marvelous. We just couldn't believe it that we got into Churchill. Well, the same feeling I know is going to take place, but even more so going into Russia, a country that I never believed that I would ever be visiting, and a lot of people never will either. And so and it was a dream that I would go there.
What I like to add to this, as far as adventure, is that I like to urge people to listen to their dreams, because sometimes those dreams are more real than life itself.